Hey everyone, welcome to Commander Conversations, the show where we do deck techs, set reviews, as well as in-depth conversations about the social dynamics of the format of Commander. Please make sure that you comment, like, subscribe, as well as hit the bell so that you stay notified and don't miss any future episodes of Commander Conversations or our Commander gameplay series, Just Another EDH Show. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Today we are here to talk about one of my personal favorite commanders, Koma Cosmos Serpent. Koma is a commander who costs 3 colorless, 2 green, and 2 blue for a total CMC of 7 with an ability text that reads, "This spell cannot be countered. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Komas Coil. Sacrifice another serpent, choose 1. Tap target permanent. Its activated abilities cannot be activated this turn." Or, Koma Cosmos Serpent gains indestructible until end of turn. That's a lot of text for a pretty expensive commander. In the world of Magic, according to the MTG fandom, Koma is the first and oldest of the Cosmos monsters, capable of dividing itself into smaller Koma fragments, or to be more specific, coils, that move independently and freely around the world tree. All the elves on Kaldheim share reverence for Koma, and many elves wear clothes that reflect that reverence, from hair braided to look like scales, to woven designs of actual snakeskin. Tyvarkel's serpentine tattoos are also a reference to the Cosmos Serpent, symbolizing its fangs and the ability to spring forward and strike. But in reality, the Koma is the nebulous envelope around the nucleus of a comet, formed when the comet passes close to the Sun on its highly elliptical orbit, hence why it gets the name Cosmos Serpent. So it's an awesome snake god being worshipped by metal elves that's based on part of a comet. I'm in. With all those abilities, there are a lot of different ways that you could possibly build Koma, but let's break it down from the top, starting with its CMC, down to each ability and some of the cards that can either protect those abilities, or make those abilities even scarier. Koma is an expensive commander. Fortunately for us, it just so happens to have one of the best color combinations for ramp in all of Magic, Simic. Koma is going to love cards like Tempt with Discovery, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, and Sky Shroud Claim, as they not only give us a tutored land drop, but also offers a second land in hand that's going to help if we ever miss one of those essential land drops. Koma also has 3 colorless in its cost, and as a seasoned Koma player, that number is going to get a lot higher and fast, since if the rest of the table is doing proper threat assessment, they'll be discussing how to take you out the second Koma resolves. Cards like Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, and Grim Monolith are great choices, or you can go with a card like Thran Dynamo or Hedron Archive that are both decent mid to late game casts in a deck like this. Then of course, in addition to the Birds of Paradise, Fyndhorn Elves, and Bloom Tenders of the world, one of the first cards we want to see hit our board is Kinnan, so we can make sure our mana production is doubled, ensuring we get Koma out even sooner, and can continue to pay to cast it when Koma inevitably gets targeted. Of course, there's the obvious temptation of adding Basalt Monolith for some Kinnan shenanigans, but we don't want to take things that far. The fact that Koma can't be countered is great because it means we obviously never have to worry about wasting 7 mana only to watch someone pour it down the drain with a cheap counterspell. That being said, Koma is going to be an absolute magnet for removal, so we're going to need some specific cards to keep it safe. This is where counterspells of our own are going to come in handy. Cards like Fierce Guardianship and Force of Will are fantastic additions because they don't leave you totally exposed for a turn cycle after having already spent so much hard-earned mana to cast Koma in the first place, since they're essentially free to cast. We can also run cards like Mana Drain, since that extra colorless mana is really going to help if we can time casting it with when we can use the mana to pay our commander tax. For when we do have mana to cast protection, cards like Heroic Intervention and Veil of Summer provide that ability. Or, my personal favorite protection in the color green, Asceticism, which allows us to regenerate essential creature pieces we would otherwise have a tough time recruiting from the grave. Spells like this are going to help us protect our most important creatures. Then, at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 3/3 blue serpent creature token named Koma's Coil. Notice how that says, each upkeep? That's right, Koma creates a 3/3 coil token during every single player's upkeep, not just your own. Let's talk about how that can get a little out of control, while at the same time how we can use it to control our opponents. Koma's Coils can be used to tap down any permanent. That includes lands. Not that we want to get in the habit of messing with people's lands, but potential for political leveraging is something that gets overlooked far too often in the game of Commander. With enchantments like Doubling Season, Parallel Lives, and Primal Vigor at our disposal, and creatures like Adrix to double up your Koma Coil production, you get to a point where you're creating 6, 12, 24. You'll be creating enough tokens that you'll be able to have every single player under your thumb by leveraging Koma's other abilities politically. I can't tell you how good it feels during each player's upkeep to look at them like a villain out of a cheesy 80s flick and ominously explain the position they're in by telling them that you're going to be tapping down all of their lands unless they give you their word that you, your board state, and your life total are not going to be touched or altered in any way, shape, or form. You obviously run the risk of everybody ganging up and Hans Grubering you, but don't we all take that chance when we sit down to play Commander as it is? We can also ramp up the control element of things with creating not just multiple coils, but multiple copies of Koma itself by throwing in cards like Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, Spark Double, Sakashima the Imposter, and if we found ways around the legendary rule with the original Sakashima or Mirror Box, we can play cards like Clever Impersonator, Clone, Glasspool Mimic, or Stunt Double. Not many tables are going to be able to overcome the kind of advantage that you get with the ability to generate so much control value. We can also toss in something like Essex Fractal Bloom to have a lot of silly fun by choosing which other creature on the board the coils we create during our own turn become, since it looks at your opponent's board in addition to your own. Imagine creating an army of Zolaport Cutthroats or Blood Artists that you can sacrifice your army of coils to in order to slowly drain your opponents. Or you grab a dozen copies of your opponent's Itali Primal Storm and have fun casting 48 cards off the top of your opponent's decks for free when you get its attack trigger off. There are a ton of fun opportunities for cool synergies with cards you don't even own. Don't want to be that person at the table though? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and we can create a ton of coils for the purpose of turning them sideways too. The fact that coils come in as 3/3 bodies with no abilities means we can run cards like Ruxa and Miraganda Petroglyphs to both beef them up as well as make their combat damage unblockable. We can also operate in a more direct and straightforward green aggro shenanigans approach by running cards like Natural Order and Defense of the Heart so that we can ensure that we get our army of coils assembled and then Craterhoof onto the battlefield to help our snakes finish the job, which is easy to do when they're either huge or can be sacrificed to tap down anything problematic on our opponent's board. How you fill out the rest of the deck is entirely up to you based on the power level that you want to achieve. But since this is a discussion about building a high-powered Koma deck, creatures like Allosaurus Shepherd so that none of our green spells can be countered, or Consecrated Sphinx for the card draw are excellent additions. Finale of Devastation is obviously a can't-miss finisher in the right scenario, and we have access to some pretty decent board wipes in the form of Azuri's Predation for creatures, Fade from History for artifacts and enchantments, and of course old reliable itself, Cyclonic Rift. Then finally we're in Simic, so you can reliably toss in your Rhystic Studies, your Mystic Remoras, and Sylvan Libraries before you're off to the Cosmic Serpent races. At the end of the day, Koma is one of those decks that has the ability to get really nasty, and it's something that you need to be considerate of in terms of who you plan on playing against when you're building it. It's probably not a great deck to build if you're playing with strangers or planning on going to an LGS. Unless you go with a straight aggro build, of course, because we should try and avoid playing certain playstyles until we've gotten more familiar with the people that we're playing against. The last thing that you want to do is ruin somebody else's experience, and this is a commander who has a lot of ways to do that. I'm sure there are a lot of ways to build Koma, but these styles seem like the best and most obvious ones to me. Do you have any ideas for how you'd run your Koma deck differently? Or any cards you think Koma would love under any circumstance, regardless of strategy? Or perhaps you're a seasoned Koma player with some experiences to share. We'd love to hear those Koma stories, so be sure to comment below. And it would help our young channel out tremendously if you could please do all the YouTubey things such as like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hitting that notify bell so that you don't miss any future episodes of Commander Conversations or just another EDH show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Enjoy the gathering.